Dear learners, welcome to this session. In the previous session, I discussed the meaning of governance and the different issues that are directly or indirectly affecting the tribal self-governance in India. I also highlighted different forms, means, and institutions of tribal governance. In this session, I will discuss the concept of politics and the changing nature of tribal politics in India. Let us understand what is politics. Politics is the activity through which people make, preserve, and amend the general rules under which they live. It is essentially a social activity. On the one hand, it is inextricably linked to the existence of diversity and conflict, and to the other, to a willingness to cooperate and act collectively. Politics has been understood differently by different thinkers and within different traditions. Aristotle, the father of political science, defined politics as an activity through which human beings attempt to improve their lives and create the good society. Others view politics as the art of governance or as what concerns the state, as the conduct and management of public affairs, as the resolution of conflict through debate and compromise, and as the production, distribution, and use of resources in the course of social existence. Politics is defined as who gets what, when, and how. Politics is the study of shaping and sharing of powers. So, politics is essentially a human activity. Politics is itself a contested concept. The concept of politics can be essentially contested. Politics is the set of activities that are associated with making decisions in groups or other forms of power relations between individuals, such as the distribution of resources or status. The academic study of politics is referred to as political science. Politics is a multifaceted word. It may be used positively in the context of a political solution which is compromising and non-violent. It may be used descriptively as the art or science of government. It also carries a negative connotation. The concept has been defined in various ways, and different approaches have fundamentally differing views on whether it should be used extensively or limitedly, empirically or normatively, or and on whether conflict or cooperation is more essential to it. A variety of methods are deployed in politics. This include promoting one's own political views among people, negotiation with other political subjects, making laws, and exercising force, including warfare against adversaries. Politics is exercised on a wide range of social levels, from clans and tribes of traditional societies through modern local governments, companies, and institutions, up to sovereign states, to the international level. In modern nation states, people often form political parties to represent their ideas. Members of a party often agree to take the same position on many issues and agree to support the same changes to law and the same leaders. An election is usually a competition between different parties. These definitions are distinct and in some cases contradictory. The definitions also overlap and they are not mutually exclusive. Engaging in political activity in the narrower sense, for instance, by voting or becoming involved in party politics, does not prevent one from engaging in political activity in the broader sense. For instance, the participating in protests or boycotting campaigns. Politics is found everywhere. There are multiple avenues for political involvement. One can engage in as many kinds of politics as one wants to. Let us now look into tribal polity. The political scenario of the 1990s reflected the fundamental transformation in the terrain of politics, which in turn is anchored in the process of social change. This period saw an expanding base of electoral democracy that was a fallout of witnessing greater participation and more intense politicization than before among the marginal social groups in India. The backward communities are often disinterested in politics unless they are encouraged and allured by vote bank to participate in the electoral process. They are prone to believe that the present socio-political setup is hostile to them. They become apathetic towards the political system and develop cynicism towards it. The effectiveness of scheduled tribes in shaping the contents of political decisions, as well as their long term orientation for political efficacy, however, constitutes the dominant theory of inquiry. The contemporary Indian scenario is increasingly witnessing the political assertion of different social groups, which leads them to form their separate political identity. This seems to contribute towards the emergence of identity politics in India. Identity politics suggests a political orientation built around a pre existing social identity. In democracies, political scientists have consistently shown that social identity is the predictor of how people vote and what kind of politics they favor. Perhaps the most striking aspect of this political assertion of tribal communities revolve around the interlocking system of the nature of oppression they suffer. In this context, tribal politics is about the identity of a given group that is based on common ethnic or cultural factors that gather the group into a functioning political unit. While there may be some disagreement within the group, ultimately all those concerned rally behind a common purpose. Even if there is some difference of opinion on how to express that common purpose, individuals will emerge within the group who are empowered to make statements that are considered to represent the entire body. In turn, the group will establish mechanisms that allow for the confirmation of orthodoxy among all group members as a way to ensure that order is maintained. This will, of course require the employment of skills to gain the support of the majority as well as talents to keep the support once it is given. Let us understand the meaning of political participation. Political participation is defined as the extent to which citizens use their rights, such as the right to protest, the right to free speech, the right to vote or to influence, or to get involved in political parties. The level of tribal political participation has direct link with their level of educational development. The low levels of literacy and education among tribal population shows the low level of political participation and vice versa. The participation of the tribal communities is associated with their level of political consciousness, that is, knowledge about political affairs. Political consciousness has strong correlation with participatory orientation, cynicism, and political efficacy of the people. The level of political consciousness among people has far reaching consequences for the successful functioning of democracy. Political participation not only depends upon political awareness but also promotes it. In tribal society, political participation is closely associated with the social characteristics of the society. The political behavior of tribals is not very much individualistic. The decision to cast a vote, it has been observed, is weakly related to the individual benefit of voting to tribal communities, but that can be defined in terms of the groups they belong to. The tribal communities of India participate in politics in various ways. Number 1 as voters, number 2 as candidates, number 3 as members of political parties, and number 4 as elected members of different political institutions taking part in decision making, planning, implementation, and evaluation. The tribal communities cast their vote for the following purposes: number 1, to exercise a democratic right; number 2, to bring success to a party of choice; number 3, to elect a desirable candidate; number 4, to promote the development of the country. The fifth purpose is to win the confidence of the local elite, and last, to achieve some personal gain. The pertinent question that needs to be addressed is who represents the scheduled tribes. During the colonial period, it was deemed that due to their backward condition, there were no capable members of tribes to represent the tribals. The system of tribal representation that emerged under the British rule was concerned more with enabling spokesperson for tribal interests to enter the legislature than with addressing the substantive issues of tribal rights and development. The question emerged more vocally after independence in India. The answer to this query reflects certain complexities, such as should the tribal people be represented by their own community members, or can they be represented by non tribal people? Some people subscribe to the second view, that the tribal communities can be represented by non tribal people due to their desired level of political articulation. But the dominant view represents the presumption of who can speak for or on behalf of another. The recognition of community based identities led to spatial representation, so that the representatives and those represented share common aspect of socio-economic life. The choice of legislators among the tribals obviously reflects the similar socio-economic characteristics within their representative community at large. The tribal communities of India have strong group consciousness, often cutting across kin, class, and political loyalties. They evaluate most of the problems in terms of we Adivasis. This trait reflects in the voting behavior of their concerned leaders in India. Thus, while providing reservations in the legislatures, it was believed that a tribal representative than a non-tribal legislator would be in a better position to comprehend the problems faced by his or her own community. As John Burnham believes that our interests are better protected when we are represented by those who share our experience and interests, and that this similarity of condition is far better indicator than whether people might share our rather shaky opinions. So the tribal communities cast their vote in favor of those candidates who share the common experience and problems. Let us understand constitution and political reservation. In order to politically involve the tribal communities into the mainstream society, Indian Constitution has adopted number of provisions in the form of political reservation. Politically, it empowers the mass and gives a political voice to sections of population that traditionally had little say in the political process. The policy aimed at integration of the deprived in the political system in order to secure accommodation of their raising aspirations and to provide for their integration with non-tribal elite on equal terms. The state promotes the principle of equality and universality in the political system. It ensures political participation of tribal people through the measure of preferential treatment. In other words, Following the principle of universal adult franchise, the state has become more politically inclusive in nature. Thus, the policy represents a major political innovation to guarantee proportional self-representation to the tribal communities whose long experience has left them with such low levels of resources for political competition that they would normally be unable to compete effectively in a democratic government. Consequently, Articles 330, 332 and 334 provide for reservation of seats for the scheduled tribes along with the scheduled castes in the Lok Sabha and the legislative assemblies of the states. In similar way, Article 243d reserves one-third of seats for the tribal communities at the different levels of local self-government, popularly known as Panchayati Raj institutions. So there is a reservation of 7.5% of seats in lower house of the Indian Parliament, and the statistical figure of the reservation at state level varies from state to state on the basis of their proportion to the total population of the state. The effect of reservation of seats is to guarantee a minimum number of seats to the members of scheduled tribes in proportion to their numerical strength. Accordingly, seats are reserved for the scheduled tribes in the Lok Sabha and the state assemblies. In the context of electoral reservation of scheduled tribes in India, it is important to point out that there is no reservation of scheduled tribes in the upper house at the center or in the states. This is because of the differences in the electoral procedure for both the houses. In case of the lower houses of the parliament, that is Lok Sabha, and the assemblies, that is Vidhan Sabha, the people directly elect the members, while the people do not elect the members of the upper houses directly. Rajya Sabha is composed of the representatives of the state and the union territories and the nominated members by the President. Unlike the Vidhan Sabha, the members of the Vidhan Parishad are elected by the members of the municipalities, district boards and other local authorities, graduates of the universities, persons engaged in teaching and other educational institutions, by the members of the state legislative assembly from among persons who are not members of the assembly and the members nominated by the governor. In short, the representatives of the lower houses are more responsible to the people than the upper houses. Seats reserved for the scheduled tribes are to be filled by joint electorate. These reservations do not involve separate electorates, in the sense that the representation of a particular group by legislators chosen by an electorate composed solely of members of that group. The seats are reserved in the sense that candidates who stand for them must belong to those communities. The entire electorate, however, participates in choosing among candidates so qualified. However, this provision does not deprive a member of scheduled tribes of his right to contest a general seat on the strength of the very nomination for a reserved seat. Consequently, scheduled tribe members were elected in Parliament as well as state assemblies on non-reserved seats in the initial general elections. For instance, it can be pointed out that in 1952, 1 and 4 members of scheduled tribes were elected on general constituencies in Lok Sabha as well as Vidhan Sabha respectively. Similarly, 3 and 11 members in 1957, 2 and 31 members in 1962, 1 and 11 members in 1967, 4 and 14 members in 1971 and 2 and 2 members in 1977 were elected on general constituencies in Lok Sabha as well as Vidhan Sabha respectively. Since seats in Parliament and legislatures are filled periodically by elections, the scheduled tribes have been founding numerical representations in these bodies. They have come to increasingly realize their significance in the power game and their capacity to tilt the balance decisively in favor of one of the competing groups. Political leaders believe that the provision of reservation in the seats of parliament and legislatures have definitely in some way accelerated the political education of these disadvantaged groups. Since they share seats in proportion to their ratio in the total population, their numbers would never be sufficient for effecting policy changes. Eventually, the welfare of the group would be possible only when the House collectively directed its attention to their problems. A small number of representatives would not be able to do much by them. According to Mark Galanter, the scheduled tribes are widely believed to be less articulate, less assertive, and less independent than their fellows. He cites data suggesting that they have been relatively less active and influential and that they are less likely to hold leadership positions. The reason is that the scheduled tribes do not constitute a homogeneous and cohesive social group both in the parliament and in the state legislatures. They are fragmented along lines of political party and linguistic or regional consideration. Even if these representatives are generally less active, they may nonetheless effectively represent the interest of their constituents. He also claims that holders of reserved seats seem to have been prominent and sometimes influential in matters relating to the welfare of the groups they represent. Let us now see the contemporary tribal politics. The contemporary tribal politics in India is revolving around the issues of everyday concerns of the tribal communities. Though the state has adopted number of positive provisions in Indian constitution and launched a number of developmental projects for the tribal communities, they continue to be at the lower age of the Indian society. They have been suffering from different forms of discrimination and marginalization. They have been marginalized in relation to their rights over resources. They have been increasingly losing their land and resources due to the acquisition of land for mining, hydroelectric projects, defense projects, and other development activities, leading to large-scale displacement. The Bailadila iron ore mine in Bastar, the Hirakud and Upper Indravati hydroelectric projects, POSCO and Vedant projects in Orissa, and Sardar Sarovar Dam in Gujarat are all examples. Since the late 1990s, several tribal groups have been mobilized to retain their rights over resources. So there has been an increase in political consciousness among scheduled tribes and demand for greater share not only of political power but also in employment, development, benefits, and even control over land, forest, and other resources. The scheduled tribes and other traditional forest dwellers Recognition of Forest Rights Act 2006 and PESA are examples of laws that have been enacted because of the struggle of Adivasi political movement. The objective of the Panchayat Extension to Scheduled Areas Act 1996, that is the PESA, and the scheduled tribes is to enable tribal communities to safeguard their traditional rights over natural resources. The Act emphasizes the rights and ownership of people's institutions and respects traditions in the control and management of resources. PESA ensures that all developmental projects pass through local institutions and not through what is increasingly been seen as an ineffective and corrupt state machinery. The PESA attempted to vest legislative powers in Gram Sabha, specifically in matters relating to development planning, management of natural resources, and adjudication of disputes in accordance with prevalent traditions and customs. It clearly states that a state legislation on the panchayats that may be made shall be in consonance with the customary law, social and religious practices, and traditional management practices of community resources. This significant legislation was expected to have far reaching consequences in the social, economic, and cultural life of tribal people in scheduled areas. For the first time, PESA gives radical self-governance powers to tribal communities and recognizes its traditional community rights over natural resources. The Scheduled Tribes and Other Traditional Forest Dwellers Recognition of Forest Rights Act 2006, popularly known as Forest Rights Act (FRA). For the first time in the history of Indian forest, the state formally admits that rights have been denied to forest dwelling people for long, and the new forest law attempts not only to right that historic injustice but also give forest communities role primacy in forest management. This act is crucial to the rights of millions of tribals and other forest dwellers in different parts of our country, as it provides for the restitution of deprived forest rights across India, including both individual rights to cultivated land in forest land and community rights over common property resources. The FRA confers three key rights to members of scheduled tribes and others who traditionally live in and off forests. Number 1 is legal title to land cultivated in forest areas before 13 December 2005. Number 2, right to use minor forest produce, grazing grounds and water bodies in forest areas. And number 3, power to conserve community forest resources and protect wildlife. By granting the legal rights, this legislative measure can act as a potential tool to empower and strengthen the local self-governance, to address the livelihood security of the people, leading to poverty alleviation and pro-poor growth, and to address the issues of conservation and management of the natural resources. These acts emerged out of the political assertion of the tribal communities and greater political awakening and consciousness among the tribes with respect to production of their lands, forest, water and other resources. So learners, in this session I have discussed the meaning of politics and the nature of tribal politics in India. Within this framework, it focused on the political participation of tribal communities and the role of the tribal representatives in the Indian Parliament and state legislatures. Thank you.